It's the Edmonton Oilers and it's the Colorado Avalanche. And gentlemen, it is game one tonight of the Western Conference Final. Our coverage here on the fourth period brought to you as always by BitBuy. Go to bitbuy.ca/TFP to get $50 when you open an account while terms and conditions apply. Aaron, we'll start with you. There's a lot of talk about this matchup and these two teams, and for good reason. McKinnon, McDavid, you look at the stars down the lineup, but there's another matchup that interests you that probably will be more important in this series.
Well, as a member of the Defensemen's Union, for me, my most interesting matchup is Cale Makar versus McDavid, because this will be the first time over the course of playoffs that McDavid's encountered a guy that's as versatile as this defenseman. Clearly McDavid, from the fact that analytics show you he never reaches a top speed on the ice because it's not long enough for him to reach it. But Cale Makar's skating ability, both in terms of his speed, his ability to turn and adapt to whatever is being thrown at him, I think this is going to be a huge challenge for McDavid. And for me, I think that's the coolest part of it, is that everybody's going to focus on McKinnon versus McDavid and what the offensive juggernauts can do. But defending McDavid, this might be the first time that he has to actually, in the Tortorella words, adapt his game to the playoffs.
Yeah, and not for nothing, McKinnon hasn't been great in the first two rounds. He hasn't been Leon O'Connor level. But to me, here's the challenge for Edmonton. And it goes to the blue line. Who did they beat in the first two rounds? Los Angeles and Calgary. They didn't have some dynamic force on the blue line in Cale Makar. Neither one of those teams did. But we might be waiting for a long time for goals in the East. We ain't going to be waiting for a long time for goals in the West. These are going to be 6-4 games because you know what? Neither team is a shutdown team. Like you can maybe argue Colorado is, but they're going to want to play at tempo. Like these teams are going to challenge and say, okay, you want to play up-tempo hockey, fire wagon brand hockey? We're ready to play that. So to me, I think it's going to be back and forth, up and down the ice, and it might be a battle of attrition. Certainly Colorado deserves to be the favorites in this because they are the better depth team. But again, because it's not just two guys on Edmonton. It's not just Connor and Leon. Zach Hyman, my man, had a great monster series against Calgary. The greatest Jewish hockey player in the NHL right now, and Evander Kane as well. So look, can they pound for pound to the rosters matchup? They don't. But when you have 4 guys or 5 guys all in, they'll challenge Colorado.
Okay, but post-mortem, Calgary, let's be honest, did they really challenge Edmonton? I mean, it was a Herculean, whatever. What an effort by McDavid. It was amazing. He carried this team. So you can name off Kane might have helped, and things got better for him, but Calgary kind of limped into this series and didn't show that well. They're going to be challenged on all levels by Colorado. Just simple. The depth up front, I think the D-core that gets not enough respect because they're out west. They're deep out there, and we can make jokes about Jack Johnson. I'm sure it's going to come from Dennis, but the fact is this team's solid. I think the biggest area of weakness is clearly going to be goaltending, but that exists, let's be honest, for both teams.
Well, it's funny you mentioned goaltending because that's where I wanted to go next. So if you're picking and looking at this series, which goaltending tandem between Edmonton and Colorado, Aaron, I'll start with you, do you trust more?
Well, I trust Colorado more because I feel like they're a better team. They should possess the puck more. I feel like the D-core really helps out. Like I said, it's a symbiotic relationship between defenseman and goalie. You can help each other out. When we see a goal come from 140 yards out on Mike Smith, I don't care if it's the game's passed and they already won. It still lingers. It's like a tattoo in your brain that could still happen. So there's a little bit of a hesitancy, I would feel, as a defenseman to fully trust the goaltending at Edmonton. Yes, he plays like a third defenseman, but he's also turnover prone, makes some massive mistakes, loves to wander. So there's all kinds of things that might play in the favor of the Colorado Avalanche. So goaltending-wise, even though they're not prize winners at the county fair, either of them, I'm going to go with Colorado.
Well, Darcy Kemper's save percentage in the playoffs is .904. That's average. He didn't steal a game. He didn't steal a series. I don't think he'll have to steal the series here, but he's got to be good enough. But if Mike Smith, you look at Mike Smith, and I know he's some nights he's great, some nights his save percentage in the playoffs is .927. So I can argue that it's a push, and if it's a push, then it's the rosters that are going to decide this. I don't think this series, or if it's going to be decided on goaltending, because to me, Darcy Kemper's been good enough, but I don't have a faith that he's going to, if it's a game 7, that he can rise up and win a game for this team. I don't think he's that type of goalie. He's good enough to make the average saves, but again, he hasn't been stellar in the first 2 rounds. He needs to be better, to be frank.
So basically, as a former recovering gambler, I'm going to tell you that you're basically stating play the over, that we could have more 7-6 games like we did in Calgary, quite possibly.
Gentlemen, you took the words right out of my mouth there, Aaron. Thank you very much for this, and it's going to be a fun one between the Colorado Avalanche and the Edmonton Oilers, and they get set for Game 1 a little bit later on tonight.